Hello, everyone down at Breakers and online on Twitch. This is Reswish here today, and I am going to be presenting to you a new little show that I decided to come up with, because I've met plenty of people within my competitive gaming career that have been like, "Oh, cool, you play, like, fighting games competitively and stuff like that. How exactly do I get into that?" And I wanted to make a series that was just very easy to learn, like easy to understand, simple ways to get into the scene essentially. And here we are. So welcome to the brand new fighting game hour here at Lake Effect Radio. Alright, so at the start of these, I'm going to be presenting a term of the week to essentially teach the lingo of the show, or to teach the lingo of the community, like, slowly but surely, as this is a weekly show. And the term of the week is a normal, which is just a very simple attack that is activated whenever you just press a button. There are variations of this term, such as like command normals and stuff like that, but I won't go too in-depth on command normals this week. That'll be next week. Normals are essentially just like your simple light punch, like kick attacks, standing or crouching in any fighting game. Depending on the one that you play, they can be just put out in just different states of the game to make sure that you can confirm into a combo. And on many occasions, they are just ways to make sure you have good fundamentals, essentially. And having good fundamentals is very important in playing fighting games. So, I've also got a list of fighting games here that I feel new people could play that are still very easy and very fun to new and old players alike. Because I've met people who have gotten into the games like very recently that don't even like some of the newer games that are a lot simpler, like me being one of them. So there, contrary to popular belief, not all fighting games are the exact same. There are many, many different genres of fighting games, like team-based fighting games, like Marvel vs. Capcom or Dragon Ball FighterZ. There are link combo system games, which really is just Street Fighter. There are chain combo system games, which are mostly every other fighting game, whether it's an SNK game like King of Fighters, an ArcSys game like Guilty Gear or BlazBlue. Just really everything other than Street Fighter. There are 3D fighting games, which are mostly produced by Bandai Namco, which are Tekken and Soul Calibur. The new Soul Calibur is coming up really soon, and I'm really excited about that. Not just because of Geralt from The Witcher being in it, but just lots of other reasons. I've got a lot of nostalgia with the franchise, and I'm so glad it's coming back. And then, yeah, so for the link, if you want to start out in a link combo game, the only one you're really ever going to find is just Street Fighter. I haven't really seen another fighting game that uses a link combo system other than Street Fighter. And I should probably explain the difference between a link combo system and a chain combo system. And I will try and explain this in the simplest way possible. But if I don't feel that if I feel that I could have explained it a little bit better, I might come back to this and reiterate it. a Link combo system is essentially you throw out a normal attack, like, say, a light punch or a light kick or something like that, and you still have the recovery of the move after hitting your opponent, but they're in so much, like, stun after getting hit that you can follow up into specific other moves. So the game doesn't allow many, I'm going to say, freeform combos. It kind of forces you into certain routes, and it's not very fun to me. I have played multiple Street Fighter games. I've played Third Strike. I've played Ultimate Street Fighter 4. I've played Street Fighter 5 not the arcade edition. I still need to play that one. I'm kind of interested in one character, and he might be the one exception to the reason why I would play Street Fighter. But aside from that, there's just lots of different things. And then a chain combo system game is where you can throw out a normal, and you can cancel your normals into other normals. Now, there's normally a very strict policy of you do light, medium, heavy, or in the terms of ArcSys games, A, B, C, because most of the ArcSys games are like 4 buttons and they just do A, B, C, D. But outside of that, it's very freeform, and it allows you to do a lot of things. There are a couple of games that are exceptions to this, like Under Night in Birth. Now, obviously, that's a very long name, so I'm going to be using its shorter terms, but there are various games in it, so the shortened terms have been differentiated, for all the different games. So I will explain those when they come up. There's also the Melty Blood franchise, but they haven't had a game in a while, so that's kind of just that's more of a dead game right now. They might be coming out with a new one soon. I really hope they do, because I never really got into the franchise, but it seems fun. 3D fighting games tend to be very, now that I think about it, kind of a mix between Link and Chain. Most of your normals you can't combo into and cancel out of very easily. Your specials you can chain together very rapidly, but your normals you can't. Now, you can go from normal to special attack in a Link fighting game and cancel the normal into a special, but you can't cancel a special into a normal. So you can't throw out a fireball and then immediately cancel it with a light punch. Very simply, in very simple terms. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, to explain the different chain games that I think could be very, very easy to learn, mostly just because the tutorials in the games are amazing. They are very, very good at explaining even the most advanced terms in the game. And one of the games that I have on here actually gives you knowledge on matchups, so you can learn how to deal with certain options that characters have with your character. And that game would be Guilty Gear. Now, most of the chain games that I have here are ArcSys games, because because ArcSys is just an amazing, amazing, amazing company. And now that they've got a building here in America, we can finally have good English dubs of their games, because they weren't that great before, I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, the Japanese dubs were a little bit better. So if you don't want to have to hear Japanese constantly and you just want to listen to the English voices, they should be better now. Once the newer games come out, because I know that they're working on a new Guilty Gear, which should have an English dub, but the current one does not. But Guilty Gear is a very, 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 very fun franchise. It allows for many, many freeform combos. The tutorial is amazing, very simple, very easy to learn. the tutorial essentially teaches you how to play the game in a very sort of Mario Party minigame style fashion, where one of the characters uses minions that they can summon within the game to teach you the differences between like jumping normals, standing normals, crouching normals. It teaches you that you can double jump, that you can super jump, that you can air dash. Terms that I will go into later on within this series. Possibly this week if I realize I don't have enough time, like of material written down, because I'm not very good at just doing improv. Not gonna lie. So Guilty Gear is just a very freeform game, and I enjoyed it a lot. Now, obviously, the chain system does have its like restrictions. Like you can't go from like punch, or you can't go from like heavy slash to punch. The buttons in Guilty Gear are a little weird. It's punch, kick, slash, and then heavy slash. And then in Xrd, the most recent series, they added dust as its own button. It used to be a macro of 2 buttons, but they made it a lot easier because it was a very important part of many characters with their combos, and they just made the game a lot easier because of it. Guilty Gear, I love the game with a passion. The one thing I will say, the tutorial is great. The little mini games and stuff that you can do for the tutorial is amazing. The one thing that I will definitely say about the game is that the characters are not easy, with the exception of Kai Kisuke, who is your average Shotokan character, for lack of a better term, because we fighting game players tend to put fighting game characters into specific archetypes, some of which tend to create their own archetypes on, like, just very simply and generally, they just make their own archetype. There are many Guilty Gear characters who have their own archetype and just there's never been a character like them, essentially. There are many characters like that in Guilty Gear. So there are some that just throw archetypes out the window, but the ones that do have archetypes are very resourceful and very good to know for newer characters, or newer players, I should say. And your best option when it comes to learning, the first character you should learn when you play Guilty Gear is Kai, because he's very straightforward. He's his combos are very simple to do, with a few exceptions. But every character always has a few exceptions in Guilty Gear. Kai is just very easy to learn, very simple, and just an all-around easy to learn character. Everything just works with him. I learned the game off of him, and now I play a completely different character who just throws everything I have currently talked about out the window, because he's very, very different from everyone else, because Guilty Gear is very special like that. The next chain game that I'm going to talk about is BlazBlue Central Fiction. I say Central Fiction specifically because the games before it were not balanced at all, as well as the fact that there were just a lot of things that weren't explained very well, especially in the tutorial and the challenges, because all Arxis games have challenge modes where you can learn a character's combos very easily, but they're simplified versions essentially until you get to the later challenges, and those later challenges are very, 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 very intricate. Some characters have frame perfect things in their later challenges. Not all of them, because not every character has to deal with frame perfect stuff. Although my characters tend to, because I like the more advanced ones. I'm different from the mold. I like a challenge. But BlazBlue, in regards to its tutorial, it's good. It's not Guilty Gear good. it explains everything within the game very well. The game tends to be very much so based around the unique mechanics that the characters have, which is their drive attacks, which is the D button on the game. BlazBlue is a four button game. It is A, B, C, D. A being light, B being medium, C being heavy, and D being drive. Drive is very unique to every character. Some have an install thing that they can do with their drive attacks. Some characters do certain things. Like they can, like one character has a essentially like just a bow staff that they can set up on the ground with their drive button and then just use it as extra mobility or an extra way to attack. And it's like just a rudimentary part of the character. There are characters that break the mold of the game through their drive buttons. And then there are some characters who have more straightforward drives. Like the main Shotos of BlazBlue, which I am going to highly recommend. Those two being Ragna the Blood Edge and Jin Kisaragi. Now, if you've noticed, Ragna the Blood Edge is a very edgy name, and he's the main character of the game, ironically. And Arc Sys tends to do that for a reason. BlazBlue was made after Guilty Gear, and you can very much so tell that it was, because a lot of characters have the same kind of tropes that other Guilty Gear characters do. Now, they have made original characters, don't get me wrong, that have never had a similar archetype in Guilty Gear ever and are very much so different. But the game can be punishing if you don't understand everything, and it doesn't explain it as good as Guilty Gear does. It does explain it, but there are videos online that explain it a lot better, I'm going to say. But Ragna is very good because he's just a very, very, very simple character. The way that many commentators describe Ragna when you see him in competitive play, because he is a character that is very commonly seen in the BlazBlue competitive scene, and he is the fairest character in an unfair game, essentially, because everything he does is very... You have to essentially just respect it if you block it, and if you don't, you're going to get comboed very heavily by the Ragna player. But he is just very straightforward. Everything he does is very, very simple. He does lack a full screen projectile, but most characters in that game do. And then there is Jin Kisaragi, who is his brother. The plot of the game is just very, very, very out there. I'm just not going to get into it because time loops. No one wants to talk about time loops. So Jin is an even more straightforward character. He has very, very, very good normals with good range. Ragna does as well, but Jin even more so because of the distance that his sword can go. Most of the characters in Guilty Gear and BlazBlue have weapons of some sort, most having swords. But yeah, Jin is very, very, very easy. He's the character that I have been playing for the longest time. I was playing Jin when I started playing the game, which was a year after it came out. So I'm very new because it came out in 2016 to the States. So I've only been a fighting game player for about a couple of years now because I played Street Fighter and I played Killer Instinct before that. Oh, I actually forgot to put Killer Instinct down on here. Oh, whatever. But Central Fiction kind of has a dying fan base right now because of cross tag battle, and I don't like cross tag battle. It makes the game way too simplified. It doesn't make a good use of what it has, and it tried to do too much with too little options, in my opinion. But I won't get too much into cross tag right now. I'll probably talk about it next week. But Jin's drive is that he can freeze his opponent in a block of ice for a certain amount of time. Now, it's always set, so you always know how much extra time you have. It is a vital part to his combos, as most of his really, really good combos have at least one freeze. He can increase the amount of freezes he can do at a time, but that's through certain mechanics of the game, and I will talk about specific games in later episodes. So outside of that, the last chain game that I'm going to talk about is Unist, or God, this is going to be really long, so I apologize for the very long-winded name. Under Night In-Birth EXE Latest. Yeah, there's a good reason we just call it Unist. Unist is a very different chain game from BlazBlue and Arcs and Guilty Gear. It's also made by Arxis, but it was co-developed by the people who developed Melty Blood, which is French bread. Don't ask me why they're called French bread. I don't know. I guess it was just for laughs. I don't know. But the way that they took Unist was a very different approach from Guilty Gear and BlazBlue. In Unist, you don't have a second jump like you do in BlazBlue and Guilty Gear. Certain characters do have double jumps, but it's only after certain attacks. So the game is very neutral heavy. It is considered the Street Fighter of chain games currently because of how neutral heavy it is. It is a very, very good game, and the most, Unist, which is the most recent version, came out, I want to say 3 or 4 months ago, so it's actually very recent. Within the span of fighting games, I should say. And its tutorial is amazing. It talks you through everything, how the meter works, how certain mechanics of the game work, like system mechanics, not character mechanics exactly. It was the first one to add a challenge system like BlazBlue and Guilty Gear did, and the challenges are very, very helpful. They all start out the same way with just crouching light, crouching medium, standing medium, crouching light, crouching medium, standing heavy, crouching heavy, because crouching heavy for every character is a hard knockdown, and I will get into hard knockdowns later, and how vital they are for many, many characters, actually. Unist, the easiest character that I can recommend for Unist is probably Hyde, because he is the Shoto of that game. If you notice, the easiest character to learn is always a Shoto. Ryu and Ken are Shotos in Street Fighter, and they're the easiest to learn because of just how simple their buttons work, and everything they do makes sense. Hyde is very good in that game because his special little passive, everyone in Unist has a little passive that they can do, is that he can do just extra little damage while you're blocking, and most other characters can't do that unless they perform a special. And he's very good for that reason, and he's also just very, very easy to learn. Unist has a lot of complex mechanics that I will get into in a later week, because it's going to need its own episode because of how many things in this game there are. I love the game to death, but it is a very, very, very complex game. Now that we're out of chain games, we can go to 3D games. And the one that I can recommend the most, I don't play many 3D games, so this might actually sound very wrong, especially since it's not even actually out yet. But I'm going to say Soul Calibur 6 because how the game looks right now, at least, I don't know the button configuration because it's been a while since I've played a Soul Calibur game, or any 3D fighting game for that matter, at a competitive level, or even just on a casual level. Soul Calibur 6 has many different things about it. 3D fighting games don't have the same archetypes that 2D fighting games do. They do still have Shotos, but the Shotos work very differently, because in 3D fighting games, most characters don't really have fireballs that they can throw across the stage, because it's too easy to evade them, because you can sidestep out of the way. It's a 3D format. You can just move out of the way of it. So you tend to just stay very up close and personal to your opponent. And that's how most 3D fighting games work. It's just very space heavy, like in the more up close areas, whereas 2D fighting games can end up being very long ranged. I can't really recommend a character for Soul Calibur 6 because I don't really understand 3D fighting games all that well. I'll try my best to explain it in a later week, and I might have a like character recommendations for easy to learn characters later on, but forgive me if I don't seem like very knowledgeable in this matter, because I'm not. I will admit that I am not very, very knowledgeable in 3D fighting games. I will try my best to explain it, but there will definitely be some challenges to it, for me at least. Now we are going into the team fighting games, which would end up being currently BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, though no one will talk about it, but I love the game to death. Graphics suck, gameplay is amazing. Dragon Ball FighterZ, and Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, although that game is starting to die very heavily. It has had a good, 8-year run, something like that. The game has been around for a very long time, but it's a very fun game, so now you know why it's been, a very long-lasting game. The game has been at EVO, which is, the most prestigious fighting game tournament. If your game is at EVO, it's a big deal in the fighting game community. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or UMVC 3 for short, has been to EVO from the span of, I think, 2005 to 2017. It's been there for a long time. It was there for a long time. I don't know exactly, because I wasn't around during that time. But the 2 versus 2 game that I can recommend is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. No matter how much I love the BlazBlue franchise, because it is what got me into more streamlined fighting games, I can't recommend BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle at all. It is, don't get me wrong, I will admit that it is a very, very simple system. It does have BlazBlue characters. It's got Under Night In-Birth characters. It's got Persona 4 characters from Persona 4 Arena, because ArcSys did that at one point in time. Still waiting on Persona 5 Arena, though. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait on that. It also added Ruby characters from the very popular Rooster Teeth show, and basically made them even more anime because they got HD sprites. They got full 2D sprites in that game. And everything was just basically built from scratch, so you only got Team Ruby in it because there was no background knowledge on it. There was no way to... There were no sprites to work with since they were 3D models. So they had to do their best to work on it, and it was very strenuous on the team, so that's why there are only 4 Ruby characters. the game does run a 5-button system with A, B, C, D, and then P. P meaning partner, because it's 2v2. The partner button is what you use to call in your teammate for, like, assists and stuff like that. The D button is not your drive button anymore. It actually is what you use to change out your, like, frontliner to your, like, and your backliner. So that's how you change characters, which is very weird because most team games don't normally have a dedicated button for that if they have an assist. Normally you would just hold down the assist button like you do in Dragon Ball FighterZ or UMVC 3. I'm sorry, I'm very long-winded, but I sometimes forget to breathe. C is basically just a command overhead or a command load, depending on if you do the standing or crouching versions. And it's just very weird that they did that. It's very Dust-esque in Guilty Gear, because that's what Dust does in Guilty Gear. I'll get into Guilty Gear later, like, with all the mechanics and stuff that it has. So, it seemed like they tried to do too much with the game. And then, going back to the buttons, A and B is light and heavy, respectively. And both of these have auto combos, where if you just mash the button rapidly, you'll get a very simple combo out of it. I don't like the way that they did it, because you just get a very simple ender, and most characters can't even cancel the final hit of their auto combo into a special to get increased damage or anything like that. They would need to call in an assist, or it just gets very difficult, at the very least, to really do anything, so you end up having to cancel the auto combo, like, mid-auto combo, which, like, is not the purpose of an auto combo. It just seems stupid to me, at the very least. So, those are the main reasons why I don't recommend BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle. I've played the game, I sort of enjoy the game, but it took away a lot of options for a lot of characters, because I've played BlazBlue, I've played Unist, both, like, there are characters from both franchises in there. They simplified them too much. They took away everything that made those characters their own characters. They put them into even more stereotypical archetypes, and it just wasn't good for the game, in my opinion. So with that out of the way, the 2v2 game that I can recommend to you is Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Now, yes, I do know this is a very controversial opinion in the fighting game community, but that's mostly due to the fact that I'm not gonna lie to you, the graphics suck. Like, really bad. Like, I don't know how most of those graphics got accepted and passed into the full game. They did update a few of them within development, but most of them, like, the game is not very the game does not have any memorable art, really. It's got some good moments here and there, but most of the characters just look so bad graphically that it's just not very appealing to see. Like, most of even the, like, supers that the characters have, like, even the super cinematic ones. Like, I'm a huge Dante guy in Marvel vs. Capcom, and Dante looked god freaking awful in Infinite, and I don't like the fact that happened to him, but I still played him because he's fun, and I enjoy him, and I enjoy him as a character, and I love the Devil May Cry franchise. But the gameplay is just so good, and if the art was better, the game would have had a lot more turnout, and the game would have been at EVO this year. Unfortunately, it didn't make its first year into EVO, which is very unfortunate for the game, because the game has a loving community, that will talk with you about anything. The game is super good. The game is somewhat balanced. It used to not be, but fortunately they did patches. Thank God. There are just so many things that they did right in Marvel vs. Capcom, like mechanics-wise, that it sucks that it did poorly in the graphics section, which in this day and age is the most important part of a game to many people. And not gonna lie, the story mode also sucks because it's just very linear, it's very simple. It was basically just a FU that Capcom did to everyone who said that Street Fighter sucked because it had a bad story mode, or because it didn't have a story mode at all. So they were just like, okay, so you don't enjoy the fact that Street Fighter didn't have a story mode? Okay, well, here's a really, really bad story mode just to shove it in your face. Which, to the like acknowledgement of the guys who don't like the game because of the graphics and the story and stuff like that, it makes sense because the story is bad. It is very bad, but I have now realized that I'm rambling, so I'm going to just start saying that the game is very fun. It is very simple. It does everything that Cross Tag Battle does so much better. It's a 6-button fighting game, so it is light punch, heavy kick, your tag button, and then an infinity stone button. I didn't think that was going to be that difficult, but okay, apparently it was. So your tag button, there's no assists in the game. You just tag immediately into your teammate, and you can tag into your teammate while you're in the middle of a move, and that move that you last pulled off is essentially the assist that you give your teammate so that they're safe when you tag them in. And then you can continue your block string from there or your combo string from there, and it just makes everything a lot easier to pull off, essentially. Like, the system was also simplified so that most of the moves were, like, stuck to, like, quarter circle forward, quarter circle back, down, down. There are a few DP inputs, and a lot of characters are very fun because of that, because it's not that difficult to pick up, and it has many, many very fun aspects to it, like just the chaos of going into one move with your initial guy and then immediately tagging into your teammate to just keep something going is just so much fun to me. The all-out chaos that ensues when people play this game is what interests me in it. And it's very movement heavy. It's very fun. It's very reaction heavy. It's such a good game, and I hate that it got such a bad rap because the graphics sucked. Which is correct, but like just it sucks that the game got killed because the graphics were bad. Not because the game sucked as a whole. Because there are plenty of fighting games that have failed because they sucked as a whole. There are many just shooters. There are many RPGs. There are many games that killed off a franchise because they sucked. And I really hope Marvel vs. Capcom can live on, even though Infinite did poorly on the graphics side. Because mechanically, like, as a fighting game player, that game is amazing. And there are many fighting game YouTube channels that will back up that claim. Maximilian Dude, who is the #1 source for, like, any fighting game and, like, the largest Marvel vs. Capcom fan in the world. So he does have some slight bias, but he does agree with people on everything. He is a very, very fair person to talk about fighting games with, essentially. And he's just, or I shouldn't say he, because, like, yeah, we're done with, so we're done with Marvel vs. Capcom now. Sorry that this is just everywhere. I probably should have practiced this a little bit before, but least I've got notes. So now we're going into 3v3 games. The very simple 3v3 game that I can recommend, and this is the last one. So after this, we're done with talking about a lot of fighting games, like as a whole, and then we'll just listen to some music, because there is some really good music in these games, and I hope that if you are a music junkie like I am, you will get into these games because of the music, because it is amazing. Some of the music, especially from ArcSys titles, like Guilty Gear or BlazBlue. Now, granted, most of the music in those games is very, very hard rock, heavy metal, stuff like that. And I enjoy it because my dad raised me on just Metallica, Motley Crue, stuff like that. So I like it because of that, and because I'm a guitar player myself. I want to learn the songs because they're so good. BlazBlue does have a few kind of like J-pop sort of songs. I'm not super interested in that because, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy anime myself. They are anime fighting games, which is just an entirely different genre of fighting games as a whole. But I don't enjoy all the K-pop stuff. Yeah, I see you. You can back away now. Yeah. All right. Sorry. There's another guy in the booth. So Dragon Ball FighterZ is a very, very good game. It's basically Marvel versus Capcom, but like for Dragon Ball. And it's so good. I love the game to death. And initially, I wasn't very happy about it because I thought the game was too simple. And then I looked at like competitive tournaments of it and went, "Oh crap, I didn't know you could do that with half these characters." And was just astonished with like the things you could do with those characters. And it was just it was a rejuvenation in me to start playing Dragon Ball again. And it was one of those games that got a lot of people into the fighting game scene. My one brother, who is a huge Dragon Ball fan, got into Dragon Ball FighterZ. Now, granted, it's the only one that he'll play with me, but like I love that time with him, and just it has connected so many groups of people, and it's great that we're finally getting a fighting game that is getting more than just fighting game players into the fighting game community. Because, like, there are many new fighting games that keep coming out, like, year after year, like SNK games, like King of Fighters, or I know there's a new Samurai Showdown coming out, and that's going to be fun. Because that franchise has been dead for way more than a decade, and it needed a resurgence, like, a decade ago. Pardon me. But Dragon Ball FighterZ is the game that got everyone into fighting games, and it's just great to see that. I wish that more people would try out other games like Dragon Ball FighterZ, which would be Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, UMVC3. It's got a very similar combo system to BlazBlue, but BlazBlue is a little bit more intricate in the inputs of special moves, but I'll discuss special moves in a later episode and like how the commands work for those. But it's just a great game overall, and I would love to see more people get into it. And I don't care what side of the debate you're on, because there's a huge debate in the fighting game community whether arcade fighting game sticks are better or pads are better. I've played both. I don't mind both. I lean a little bit more towards stick, but that's just a slight bias because I'm very nostalgic of the feeling. But the game, like Dragon Ball FighterZ, is just an amazing game that more people should get into, because it is a very good game that is very easy to learn. The tutorial is very good. It explains everything very well. It does it doesn't explain a couple of like more advanced things that you can learn, like guard canceling, or like it doesn't explain Sparking Blast as a whole, which is basically the comeback mechanic of Dragon Ball FighterZ. But you can find plenty of videos that talk about that very, very easily. Okay, so now that that's done, we can get straight into another thing that I enjoy, the music of these games, because it is so good.
Can I join in on this?
Sure, why not?
Cool, because I'm a musician and I can talk about this.
Yeah.
Especially.
Yeah.
It's good, funnily enough, if you want to stay past 2, my show is all about video game music. So.
I'm a guitarist myself, so.
Well, what I'm saying is my show starts at 2. If you want to stay for it, you can, because it's video game centric.
Yeah, I might stay for a little while.
Cool.
All right, sorry about that. So coming on to the mics now will be
Sporiope.
All right.
I'm coming in a little bit early today, folks.
So, just the amazing music that mostly Arxis develops, because just I have a huge bias towards hard rock, heavy metal music, and stuff like that, because I was raised on it. Like I said before, I'm a guitarist myself, and it's just amazing what some of the music is. All right. So
honestly, I feel like music in video games as a whole is really underrated. Even ones that are critically acclaimed and other things like that, like Xenoblade Chronicles and in many cases the Mega Man games. And like what really grinds my gears, no pun intended, is especially with Mega Man 11. People are like, "Oh, the sound design was pretty crappy this time around. They're using stock noises." Well, here's the thing: I would rather have stock noises but good like thematic music that goes along with it than traditional noises and just music that drones on and on. Because that was a complaint that they had with Mega Man 11's music, is that it all sounds the same. Well, the thing is one of the reasons that is because the default sound settings have the sound effects up here and the music back over here, and you had to switch it around.
Yeah, because the sound effects were just beating out the music. Yeah, whenever I play an Arxis game like Guilty Gear or BlazBlue or something like that, I always put the background, like I always put the BGM max, because the music is so good. Wait, hold on, that's Dragon Ball. I'll put on some Guilty Gear stuff for you guys because it is so good. Now, I can't put most of the stuff that has lyrics on in here because
I wonder why.
Yeah, it's a little bit vulgar, and there's some screamo stuff that not a lot of people will enjoy. Especially like my brother's main, whose name is Raven. His theme is very, very screamo, very metalcore.
And we don't want to freak out the people that are in Breakers by just having screaming playing over the speakers.
As well as just really, really distorted guitar. Now, don't get me wrong, most of the Guilty Gear is distorted guitar, but there are some cleaner like guitar sounds in some of the songs as well. Let's see. Let's try.
Pick something.
Oh, here's one that everyone tends to enjoy. Here is Holy Order's "Be Just or Be Dead," the theme for Kai Kisuke from Guilty Gear XX, or the longer name is GGXXX and Core Plus R. But I won't get into the names of fighting games because they're long and convoluted and unnecessary.
All right, we're back.